Hello.
Hi, Janae. How are you?
Finding yourself.
Thank you.
Again, you're matching with the blue hair. I like it.
You look lovely too.
Thank you. I'm just rushing in now to campus because my next leg, the sock, is on campus.
Yeah, so I'm going to that just after this.
Been a hectic morning. See, we have already 10 students. Good afternoon, everybody. We still have 5 minutes, I think, left.
Can you hear me, Learning Program Director?
Hi, Ms. Mutuberi. I can hear you. How are you?
We
Yeah.
can hear you on the screen.
Can't hear me from the laptop. Hello, ladies. Good afternoon.
How are
Good
you?
afternoon.
You are muted. Hi, Janine. How are
I
you?
like the jacket. Fine, thanks in yourself.
I'm just testing my machine. I can't hear you. Can you hear me? They can hear me, but I can't hear them. The microphones are not muted. Yeah. I'm in the lecture room. Unfortunately, I'm connected to my laptop. So the IT guy is here to help me with the volume.
Oh, shame, Evelyn. Today we only have the Zoom session.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? They still
Yes,
can't
we
hear me.
can. I'm quickly gonna phone you. Do you have your phone with you?
I can't. Yeah. Okay, we see. Maybe let me try to increase my volume here. Can you hear me now?
We can do, yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
So good afternoon, everybody. I see it's 25 minutes to 1 and we have 40 participants. Nice. Dr. Pariachi is going to have the session this morning, or actually this afternoon. Please feel free to join in if you have any questions. Put it in the chat or Q&A and then we can answer you from there.
Okay, afternoon everybody, hope you are all well. I'm just going to inform you about the plan for the session this afternoon. I'm going to just revise the unit 1 where we discuss the different disciplines under under beginning knowledge. After that, I'm going to hand over to Mrs. Vederman, who wants to discuss the involvement tracker with you and explain the revised student lecture plan with you. And then I will continue from slide 8 of lecture 2. Okay, we're looking forward to engaging with you with the session. So to start off with beginning knowledge, what Mrs. Vederman discussed with you in the first lecture. So the content and the concepts of beginning knowledge, as you know, have been drawn from the social sciences, history and geography, natural sciences, and technology. So when you look at social sciences, social science and the concepts therein, it encapsulates conservation, cause and effect, place, adaptation, relationships and interdependence, diversity, individuality, and change. So if you look at the color coding, you can also see which concepts go together. So in terms of the natural science concept, with that aspect, you will be dealing with life in living, energy and change, matter and materials, planet Earth, and beyond. And with that goes your scientific process skills, which is the process of inquiry, which involves observing, comparing, classifying, measuring, experimenting, and communicating. Your last one is the technological process skills. There is which you investigate, design, make, and evaluate. Now, all of this is found in your CAPS document. So to explain it one moment further, life in living is the study of living things, okay? Energy and change, how energy is transferred, heat, light, electricity, motion, magnetism, and sound. Now, sound was one of the topics I think you had for your involvement tracker that you could choose from, okay? Matter and material is non-living things, wind, sound, water, and light. And water is also one of the topics, okay, for your involvement tracker. And then if you look at planet Earth and beyond, it's ecology, astronomy, meteorology, oceanography, and geology. Okay, if you move on to the social sciences, which covers history and geography, here you learn about cycles of change, okay, conservation, how to make the world a better place, cause and effect, consider our behavior and attitude, diversity and individuality, where you investigate the variety of things our world consists of. Okay, relationships and interdependence. You discover all things that are dependent on each other. Adaptation, how species adapt to their surroundings. And then finally with technology. So here you've got your structures. They are either natural, man-made, frame, shell, or solid. Processing, simple food and textile, systems, mechanical and electrical. So during the course of my lecture, if you have any questions about the involvement tracker after Mrs. Vederman has explained it to you, please post it to the chat and then Mrs. Vederman and Ms. Mutaweri will assist you with those questions. Okay, going forward, I'm going to hand over to Mrs. Vederman now because she wants to explain the involvement tracker to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pariachi. I see we don't have any questions. I received a lot of emails from the DL group, so I just wanted to remind you of some things and just say one or two things so that you're not confused. I see we already have 13 students who've uploaded their activity, so thank you very much for starting with this activity. Please don't leave it up to Friday or Saturday morning to finish. If you're going to send us an email on Saturday morning, we probably won't answer because it's weekend. So try to do it in the week. If you're unsure, email us, then we can guide you in this week going forward. Okay, we want to see that you understand the 3 disciplines of beginning knowledge. So for what you can use to make the PowerPoint, because I had a lot of questions regarding Word or PowerPoint or drawing it. It doesn't matter, whatever it's easier for you, it's fine, as long as we as lecturers can see that you have a mind map and we can see the subtopics underneath each discipline with your research and your activities. So if you want to draw it and you want to take a photo and you want to upload that, it's perfect. If you want to do PowerPoint and then you make a PDF, remember, if it's PDF, that it's easier. We can't change the documents. So I get it's like a printed paper or printed assignment that I can mark from there. So it's better to PDF your PowerPoint and then upload the PDF documents. If you want to do it on Word and then PDF the Word documents and then upload it, that's also fine, as long as we can make out what's going on and we can mark it from there. So in the end, we just want to see the mind map with research and activities underneath each subtopics. You don't have to do a lesson plan or write pages and pages of research. It's just a 1 page with a mind map, and then at the bottom you have your reference list with all the references that you used to research the subtopics. Please try and see if you can get at least 2 or 3 subtopics at each discipline. So if you start with the CAPS document, you'll see sometimes the themes lend themselves to a certain discipline. So for water mixing, a lot of those subtopics will be more natural sciences, mixing things in water, because we can do a nice experiment, and you have to think out of the box to link it to social sciences and technology. But then you can find your own subtopic, like saving water and cleaning water, making something in technology. So the CAPS will be your start, and then you're more than welcome to add other subtopics underneath each discipline so that you have at least 2 things to do. And then when you do your research, this will be the content and maybe an activity that you can do with the subtopic. You're going to get full marks if I can see you understand all 3 and you have an activity and research with your in-text referencing. If I see you struggle a little bit, you don't know, you can't differentiate between the 3 subtopics, then you would either get a 5 or a 3. So 50%, depending on what you have on your mind map. Remember, you have a question, do we do a lesson for each concept? No, you don't have to do a lesson. This is just the planning before we get into the lesson. So you will do a lesson in your assignment. I just first want to help you linking the subtopics or the themes to the different disciplines. Jess Mika, hi ma'am, I trust that you're well. Can I do my spider diagram in a landscape form? You're more than welcome. It's easier if it's in landscape. Michaela, I think it all depends if you can link it to the concept. Yes. Lauren, Eaton, sorry if I pronounce your name incorrectly. Where can we find written instructions for the involvement tracker? It's in your assessment guide. So the assessment guide has been up from the first week. Everything is at the prescribed readings. And there's also, if you go into the activity link, there's a video that you can watch. Jolene, so there should be an activity. Please try and add at least 1 activity at each discipline so that we can see, in natural sciences, I'm going to do an experiment or observe something, so I can see the science skills coming through. Technology will be more making a boat or making a product to solve a problem. So if you can, please add at least one activity at each discipline. Mrs. Mtuweri, I saw you, I think you also wanted to add something. I saw your video coming on.
Thank you, Janine. Thank you. I have students in the venue. I wanted to give them an opportunity to ask if they would want, because they are not connected to the link. Does any one of you guys have a question on the involvement tracker? Yes, I've given them a chance. Unfortunately, they don't have anything in mind now, but maybe during the lecture, if anything comes up, I'll come back to you. Thank you so much.
And remember, we're always here to help, so send an email if you're unsure about how to link your subtopics. Rather ask before the time, because then we can guide you. In the end, this is something to keep you involved and to make sure that you understand the 3 disciplines. Okay, there's no other questions. Awesome. I see there's one question page. One activity under each discipline. Does it mean that we can add the activity under any one of the subtopics? Yes. You can decide then which one you want to link it to. You can do a little bit of research. We get a lot of nice experiments and activities that you can do with the kids. Okay, if you have any other questions, you can add them or send us an email. I'll answer them in the chat and Q&A. Guys, I've uploaded a lecture plan. And I've uploaded a new one this morning. Unfortunately, we had to change some of our Zoom and campus base, but the content that we're going to cover is still the same. You are first year, so we have to see you a little bit more, give you that chance to come to campus and have live lectures. So you will see for this week, I kept it the same as what we discussed on Friday, because you had the Zoom and campus sessions already on Friday the first week. But for the rest of the semester, you'll see there's more campus sessions. So I think in week 4, we're going to have campus Tuesday, campus Thursday, and then the Friday will be a Zoom where we're going to do a tutorial breakout rooms again. And then week 7, we have a campus and a campus again. And then the Friday will be a Zoom. Week 9, I think we have campus on the Friday. So I tried to keep it at campus for Tuesday and Thursday because we have 2 sessions. And the Friday, we only have the 1. But for this one, we're going to actually make a product for technology. So please, guys, if you can come to campus on that day, these sessions will not be live streamed, so you won't be able to sit at home and watch the session and ask questions. It will be recorded, so you will be able to watch it afterwards, but the participation, especially in technology, is really important. Otherwise, the process skills won't make sense. So diarize the 10th, or it probably will be the 9th of October, that Friday, to come to campus. Then week 11 campus on Thursday and Tuesday again, Tuesday and Thursday, and then the Friday we will end off with the Zoom. Okay, so just make sure that you get the last or the revised lecture plan. But as I've said, what you should do per week, the off weeks for week B, the revision and the things that you have to read is still exactly the same. I haven't changed anything over there. Michaela, thank you very much. If the slot is fully booked, but I want to come to campus, what can I do? Email your lecturer to find out. There is an overflow that we can organize at the campus. So please just email before and say it's full and you won't be able to come to campus, so that we can make a plan. If you want to come to campus, we're going to make a plan to assist you, because it's nice to have you guys at campus to have a face-to-face lecture, and then we can do practical activities, answer your questions. So we want you to come to campus. So please, Michaela, email your campus lecture so that we can make a plan. Best ways to book 48 hours before the lecture. Yes, 2 days before the time it closes, but you're more than welcome. I know we do walk-ins. So that lecture will go ahead unless somebody gets COVID or something unplanned happens before that time. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Good luck for the session. Looking forward to seeing my group on Thursday.
Okay, afternoon, everybody. I'm going to continue from slide 8, where we left off the previous week. So it's lesson 2, researching children's understanding and ways of learning. Again, if you have any questions, please post them to the chat, okay? And then we can interact. So to start off from here, we know that children make sense of science ideas or lessons in relation to existing ideas that they hold. That means, you know, they see the world through their own lens, the way they envision things, the way they see it, and the ideas that they have. Children's differences in everyday or cultural ideas cause variation in how they make sense of their science lesson. So if you look, like we discussed previously, and we said that depending on the culture that you've come from and the home that you're raised in, your ideas that you have on everyday concepts, which can then be brought on into your scientific world, will differ from child to child. Okay, so children make sense of ideas in relation to what they already know. And with this, there are various factors that influence a child's thought processes. And some of them include, and which is the most obvious one, the environment in which we live. We do know that the environment in which you come from has a huge impact on your life. So it could be your environment within the house and on the outside of the house. If you remember Bronfenberger's, what you learned in, I think it was ECD, ECD or GI, I think it was ECD, and you will still learn more about that, is that the environment that you live in has an impact on you. And then your school, your places of worship, your the city you live in, your country, the government, everything has an impact on the life in which you live. So the beliefs of the community in which you live, that impacts a child as well. And obviously the age has an impact on the way they think and what they believe. Just checking the chat. Oh, sorry, I put my volume on higher. Okay, it's on the maximum now. Okay, so these factors, as well as the others, all influence the way children think and act, and it's often difficult to separate the factors from each other because they're all interrelated and they're interconnected at some point, and they have a direct influence on how children view their world. So what is our role as teachers then? And perhaps now, you know, you can post your response to the chat and you can engage with each other. What is the teacher's role in all of this? What is our purpose of being in the classroom then? Do we just, whatever knowledge those learners have when they come into the classroom with it, is that where the stop sign comes out? Or is that, you know, the yield sign where we say, okay, what more can we do to help them? So as teachers, we always have to bear in mind that children are in our care and they have very different thoughts and ideas to us as adults. Remember, we also come from a different time frame to what the children come from. So your thinking and the way you were brought up in the world in which you were brought up with and studied through is different from the world that they are learning in. Okay, so the ideas and thoughts will be very different to that of the school in which they are being educated in. And think about this then, this obviously has a ripple effect onto them, and it can cause conflict and undue stress in the children's lives. Okay. So regarding the development of concepts, they have a direct interaction with the world. Okay, with everyday concepts, you know, your solid, liquid, and gas phase that they're having. It's a foundation for scientific concepts, and it's a foundation for higher order thinking. So if you look at this, when you were in school, I mean, one of the basic things you learned was that of the solid, liquid, and gases, how it's stored, how it becomes. How does water become a gas? Obviously, it's through steam. The water depends, obviously, it's on the temperature. And each state, the solid, liquid, or gas, has its own unique set of physical properties. And there are easy ways to do this in the classroom if you're just creative about it. And by asking questions from a starting point, open-ended questions, learners will be able to put together the different phases of and the different concepts of the solid, liquid, and gas. So liquids, you know, they don't have a definite shape, and it takes the shape of whatever container it's put into. Okay, it has a definite volume. Gases have no shape, no definite volume. Whereas solids, on the other hand, it has a definite shape because it's rigid and definite volume. So obviously, ice is an example of a solid. Okay, water is also, when it's frozen water, it's a solid again. Liquid is wet and it's fluid, and water is the gas, and you know it's present in the water vapor. It's present in the air around us. So if you go on and you look at science concepts are only useful if it relates to the child's real world experience. And that is absolutely true. A science concept will not make sense to a child, and it won't be relevant to them if you don't take that concept and you make it applicable to the world in which the learner is living in. So we can say that it's transformative because our everyday experiences can be then brought into scientific concepts. So if you look at the phases of water, a condensation is a change from a vapor to a condensed state, which is a solid or liquid. And we know about evaporation is a change of a liquid to a gas. And there are simple examples to do this with evaporation in the classroom or outside the classroom. Learners automatically know, I mean, the moment the ground is wet and then it becomes dry again, and it's like, you know, what happened? How did it go from wet to being dry? And these are all, instead of giving the answer with anything that a learner asks you in the classroom, you need to ask them the questions that will lead them to the correct answer. Thank you, Michaela. Our role is to understand why a child, thank you, Mrs. Vederman. I was going to read it, why a child understands or sees a certain concept the way that you, and then give them more information on that concept, correct them, and lead them to the right. Well done. Thank you for that. Yes, it is absolutely. Yes.
No, I want to say I'm glad you're reading it out loud. It's a very good comment that you're making, Michaela. And sometimes we as teachers forget that. We only want to start with explaining what we understand and what we know, and not where the child is and what they understand. And then they struggle to make that link of, this is my knowledge and this is the new knowledge, and I can move forward. So if you don't start with where they are, there's a gap with what they understand and what you are doing, and they can't make that link. So that's very important. Thank you very much.
Well done, Michaela. You're absolutely correct, because that's why that prior knowledge in your lesson plan is, you know, it's so important. You need that starting block of where the learner is, and then to move on with it. Thank you, Mrs. Vederman. Okay, so then you transfer knowledge to other contexts. So teaching them, you know, it's a double move regarding teaching. You take your everyday concepts and then you link it to your scientific concepts. And this improves the child's thinking. Therefore, it changes their behavior. So we're going to move on to discuss Vygotsky's theory. And Lev Vygotsky was a Soviet psychologist, and he proposed the idea that we need to be aware of the two interconnected levels at which children develop concepts, namely the everyday concepts and the scientific level. Okay, so children learn concepts and they create ideas when they are interacting with the environment on a daily basis. And that is why the teaching of science in the classroom is so important. And even when they're on the playground, to create opportunities for them for scientific experience, where that exploration and investigation, all of that comes through on the playground in outdoor play. Okay, it's not only about the gross motor and the fine motor skills that they can develop on the playground. We just need to create opportunities in their entire environment. Okay, they learn through experiences and thereby develop a natural understanding of how things work. And we know that they are naturally curious, and we all know how a little child will go and ask him the questions, but why? But why? But why? you know, and this is often one of the questions that parents get tired of answering as well. Okay, thank you, Timmy. Understanding the children's prior knowledge will also inform the teacher on which gaps are they to fill and where to bring all the children up to speed so they can all have a clear understanding as to the new knowledge that the teacher is about to impart. Well done. Absolutely correct. And those open-ended questions help you so much in forming all of that. Okay. So like we said, they learn through experiences and thereby develop a natural understanding of how things work. However, Vygotsky believed that without conscious intervention, these everyday experiences can't be easily transferred into higher order thinking, and the formation of scientific concepts then remains underdeveloped. Okay. So therefore, it is our role to put them on the path by asking all those questions and creating opportunities. We will allow them to develop that higher order thinking. So the most important aspect here is the teacher must develop this experience further, like we've mentioned. The children must be aware of the terminology such as liquids, solids, and solutions. They must also be given the opportunity to explore the relationship between liquids, which we know the one form of that is water. And as an example, solid is powder paint. So if you look at an example within the classroom, in a preschool class, children are given paint to mix. They mix the powder then with the paint. But then they have got to investigate and experiment how much of water is actually needed to dilute the powder enough for you to be able to paint. So you can see again, because it's measurement, your math skill comes in. You know, it's a trial and error where they have to continuously see, okay, have I reached the correct texture for which I need to paint? So depending on the amount of water and the paint given, the consistency of the paint will vary. And this is an everyday experience that a preschool child should have, because we know we should be creating those art opportunities for them as well. So the teacher must develop this experience further. Like we said, the children must be made aware of the concepts, the terms. They are never too young to learn new vocabulary. As long as they understand the meaning of it, it helps them a lot, because they speak well, they understand the context of the words that they're using, and eventually they are able to write better, because from your verbal context of things, you can place that into the written format. So you're helping them there as well. So the teacher must allow the children to have more water and less powder paint when mixing, and that's when they can compare and contrast and see what's happening. But during this process, it can't be a silent process, you know, just where the child is thinking in his head and trying to play out what's going to happen. The teacher should actually be there asking them those questions. So if you think about your Bloom's taxonomy and the questions that you're going to be asking, Ms. Mutaweri, right? In this example, children.
Thank you, Dr. Be continuing having. Oh, she can't hear me. Sorry, can you hear now?
Yes,
Dr. Kumari, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Sorry, yes, I just wanted to let you know that we are having a volume glitches from your presentation. Maybe our learning program director can.
I've got my volume on 100.
By the sounds of things on my side, it sounds like the venue is experiencing connectivity problems, which would also explain why we're struggling to hear from them.
It's clear from my side, so I think it's a venue.
Thank you. Okay,
Thank you.
We have to allow the children to see. So it's a visual thing, obviously, because they're busy with the paint, and then make new connections. So that's how they start to form basic scientific concepts. Okay, so if you look at Vygotsky's theory, and if you take the concept of insulation, okay, what do you know or understand about this concept? And you can post your response to the chat. So you know that insulation will help you keep the temperature in your house all year round, protecting the home against cold in winter and and excess heat in the summer. Okay, so what type of material do we use to stop the passage of electricity, heat, or sound from one conductor to another? We know that insulation helps increase the energy efficiency of your home by reducing the amount of heat that escapes from it in winter. So it contains the heat in your home. It keeps it from getting too warm in the summer months, and then you are retaining the cold air to keep the interior comfortable. So again, it's the transfer of everyday knowledge into scientific concept. And these are questions that you can ask the learners into the class once you have identified the theme that you're having. You have to use what they think about and what they see and what they wear, everything about their own life world, and transfer that into scientific knowledge for them. So for instance, if I could, I'll ask you a question. When you go for a picnic in summer, whether you're on holiday and you go to a beach or you go to a lake or you go to a dam, the question is, why would you put cold drinks and ice in a cooler? Why not just put them in your backpack? Why not do that? But what's the reason for keeping it in a cooler when you go? So when you ask questions like that to the learners, you need to wait for them to think about it and listen to their ideas and wait for their responses. Then, and you give them motivating responses to say, yes, my angel, you are correct. And for those that are not on the right track, then you ask them leading questions to get them to that point. Okay, so eventually the answer will come to the cooler keeps the drinks cold because it acts as an insulator. Now, you may think that some of the learners don't know the word insulator, but depending from the homes that they come from, and if they have older siblings and the type of language that the parents use in the homes and the communication that they have, there could be a learner that already knows the word. For those that don't, they have now learned a new word, and it's just for you to remind them to use it in the correct context. Okay, so it acts as an insulator, and it slows down the transfer of energy from one source to another, meaning that it helps keeps the inside of the cooler cold and the heat out. Then you can go into ask them questions. What is the best material to use for insulation? And depending on the careers of the parents, there could be some learners in the class that would already know the answers to this here. Okay, so ice coolers work as insulators to keep drinks and food cold. Okay, so the opposite of an insulator then would then be a conductor. So you would ask the learners, what do you think a conductor is? Also remember, everything that you discuss does not have to be done in one lesson, because you don't want to confuse them. You want to make sure that they understand the one concept completely before you go on to another term or another definition. They must be able to use it in the correct context. And depending on how long your theme is, you will be able to spread this out correctly. So you probably get the idea that the conductor speeds up the transfer of energy from one source to the other. You can talk about a pot that's boiling on the stove. And then again, you can bring in the life skills part of what would happen if you touched a metal pot when it is hot. Okay, would you get burned? Another thing is that sometimes learners seem to think that the moment the knob is turned into the off position, the plate automatically, it becomes cold and they can touch it. So you can ask your open-ended questions again. How long would it take for it to cool down? Is it a good, what would happen if you touched a hot plate? So all those open-ended questions could come in there. Then what would happen if you designed a cooler using material that acts as a conductor, or a cooking pot with material that acts as an insulator? So again, these are all questions that are possible questions to ask the learners. The most important thing is to listen to what the students have to say before you find the next question to take them on to the next point of thinking. Okay. So what would you have to consider before teaching the concept of insulation? So like we said, and what the students have contributed to the chat, find out what they know. That prior knowledge is so important, because another student also mentioned it gives you your next step to know how much they know and where you are going to take the lesson. Remember, your lesson plan is not done whilst you are discussing the theme with the learners. The lesson plan is done in advance to give you an outline of what should be discussed and all the concepts you should be imparting to the learners. Okay, your research topic your personal knowledge. Again, we did mention to you that you can use your personal knowledge, but you can't only use your personal knowledge for the entire lesson. You have to research it as well. Insulation is when one keeps the desired temperature of the body. Thank you, Michaela. Then you need to devise an activity, okay, and decide whether it is going to be a natural science activity, social science and technology, and when you are going to do it. So also with your technology activity, everything does not have to be done in one lesson. It's not possible because you have to go through your whole planning phase. You need your discussion, you need your planning phase where the learners are actually involved in the planning of it before you get to the end product. So remember, you need to give enough time and space in your lesson plan in order to cover everything. It doesn't bode well that you have this amazing lesson plan with all the ideas in it and then you compact it in one lesson, because then your learners haven't learned anything from the lesson. They've just been snowballed with so much of information and they can't, you know, decide for or pick out what to use when. Yes, Mrs. Vederman?
Now, I wanted to add to that, a lot of times I get lessons, and I think you can probably agree, where students try to do too much. So you overthink your lessons and you try to do, if we're talking about plants, I'm going to discuss everything on plants that I possibly can. And remember, it's foundation phase learners. Keep 2-3 outcomes and just focus on one tiny subtopic or that outcome that you want to let the learner understand or be able to do, that skill that you're going to develop. So don't be too scared to make your lesson simplistic. That's all I want to get to, because sometimes your students overthink it and you want to do this amazing lesson with a lot of content and knowledge, but the learners are grade 1, 2, and 3. They can't concentrate that long. They can't keep that much knowledge in their head or make sense of what's going on. So simpler, the better.
Thank you, Mrs. Vederman. Okay, also remember, so what would you have to consider before looking for an activity? So you're going to have to research a hands-on activity for social science, natural science, or technology lesson. Ensure that the activity is relevant to the children in your class and fulfills the outcome that you've chosen. Now remember, grade R learners are also part of the foundation phase. So the knowledge that you give him also has to be segmented in such a way that they understand what you are telling them. You do not go too fast to complete the theme as well. And obviously we have to cater for the different types of learners in the class, those that are your front runners, the average ones, and those that need a bit more support as well. Okay, ensure that the activity is relevant to the, pardon, I've mentioned that to you already. Okay, then we're going back to prior knowledge of the learners. It must have relevance to the child, to the children in the classroom, the area that they come from, okay, the culture of the school and the culture that they come from. And you will know this from, because you've already established a relationship with the learners in your class. You'll be going through their files. You know what are all the cultures that are prevalent in the school, okay? So if you're going to link it to the theme of winter, your outcome and personal knowledge on both winter and insulation. So again, I'm going to go back to, yes, you have general knowledge and you have personal knowledge on almost all the themes, right? Because you've come a long way in your life as well, but you still have to research it. The learners cannot come into the classroom with the same, cannot leave the classroom with the same knowledge that they came into the classroom with. So any suitable activity and relevant activity, for example, you can look at the fabric of different jackets and jerseys. I noticed during practical that it helps to piggyback on previous lessons. For instance, to say, remember when we did different states of water, what did we learn about gas today? We're going to work with this. Well done to me, yes. You build on your knowledge from the previous lesson. That's why it's important not to do everything in one lesson. You build up on them. Well done. And you can also draw information from lessons that were done maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, a month ago, at the beginning of the lesson, at the beginning of the year as well. Okay, so if you're looking, for instance, like I mentioned, you're looking at the fabric of different jackets and jerseys. Obviously, you're doing it in the winter, and that's the clothing that they're already wearing. Lost and found property as well is nice to use as examples as well. That, you know, that sensory thing of touching the fabric, you know, accounting for Gardner's multiple intelligence. All of that comes in here as well, where they can touch, they can feel, they can look at it. Practically investigating the fabric and discussing which one keeps us warmer and why. So also then we go to designing a jacket for them in winter. Your fashion designers, you know, create a platform for them, for learners to know that it's something that they can do. And even though this is a scientific concept, it leads to so many different career paths, and that's something you should be discussing as well. Okay, designing a jacket for them to wear during winter. So throughout the year, like Tumi's mentioned, and we've told you as well, keep building on this foundation knowledge wherever possible. It doesn't mean, okay, I've covered the theme of winter and I discussed insulation in week 5 of the second term. I don't have to do this again because they've learned everything again. Insulation comes up again in summertime. It's something that you can bring about and discuss throughout the year. You have to keep building on this foundation of knowledge wherever possible. You need to expose them to different situations where insulation is used. For example, you may bring a flask to school, you know, maybe flasks are taken with an outing depending on the age of the learners. How does thatching keep houses warm in winter? There are homes that have thatch roofs. What are the dangers of a thatch roof as well? You need to encourage questions, encourage investigations. It's just to allow them to become critical thinkers. That is the reason for asking all these questions. You also have to accept that and know that when you give an activity, it's not only for the learners to investigate. You need to be an active participant in this learning process. So you become co-investigators and co-learners. Okay, children are not just, you know, if you think of them of empty vessels or empty vases where they just have to sit back passively and receive the information that you give them. They have to be willing participants where they are engaging in the topic and engaging with you as well. So they should be active participants in the teaching and learning process. Obviously, and we all know this, none of us know everything about every single topic. We don't know every fact, because as we speak in, you know, in nanoseconds, things change. As we speak in, research is being done, and there's new facts that come about of knowledge that there's already been research and known about. So encourage children to research topics for themselves and to collaborate in the investigation of new information. What is also interesting is that grade R learners as well can do research, because, you know, although they don't get homework, you can tell them verbally, your homework for today is whatever, you know, go home and find out what you can research about. Explain to them what the word research means. They'll go home, they'll speak to the parents. They're all well aware of what the internet is and what it offers them. And then give them a motivator. You know, if you come to school tomorrow morning and whisper the answer in my ear, you're going to move up on your motivation chart, something like that. And the reason why I say whisper it in my ear, because if they say it out loud, then whoever else has done the homework, the answer has already been given out in the whole class. And from my experience with graders, they feel a bit sad because sometimes they have the same answer as another learner, and they feel they weren't given that opportunity because that answer was sort of stolen from them. So just remember their little hearts as well. That is why I mentioned that as well. You can also ask them to write it down on a piece of paper for you. And the handwriting, yes, is not all that well if we are talking about grade R learners, but if they go home and they inform their parents, it's also a nice way to check if they can carry a message home, you know, and what information they come through. The parents will write down the answer for them and they can copy it on a piece of paper. So you're encouraging the handwriting skills as well. Okay, so that's just an idea for you. So find out children's understanding. Now, there's an example in the textbook. If you read pages 32 to 41, this image was used in an interview with a 5-year-old boy. I think it's important that you read it and it's important that you do independent reading as well. It's quite an interesting interview that took place with this 5-year-old boy and the interviewee. It goes on for quite a while, but it's really interesting to read. So here, the picture cards were used to find out the meaning of the word animal. So when is an animal? An animal, and that was the questions that was posed in the interview. Go ahead and read it, it's quite interesting. Okay, so remember, it's important that learners should work with concrete material first. We know that they're on a concrete level, they're not on an abstract level yet. So that it makes sense of the environment. And again, we start with what the learners know. Okay, so construct knowledge construction through research. So we can look at it in 2 ways. Okay, the first one is, do we only use a Western view lens to look at knowledge? You can post your response to the chat. I'd like to engage with you and see what your thoughts are on this. Do we not allow other forms of knowledge or understandings to merge? What do you think our role is as teachers? I'm just going to give you a few seconds to put some responses in the chat so we can engage on that. Or if you want to speak now, you can raise your hand and our LED can promote you and we can engage that way. I don't know if Mrs. Vaderman or Mrs. Mutaweri wants to come in and say anything at this point, or we'll just wait for the students to post their responses.
Let's see from the students.
My connection is very bad this side. We keep on being bounced in and back and forth.
Sorry, guys.
I don't see anything on the chat. I'm not sure.
Nothing.
I'll continue.
Should we call on a name? Be able to.
Sorry, students, as we're progressing, you can more than welcome to put your responses in the chat and then we'll engage with you there. So moving on. First question, how do you think a rainbow is formed? So if we look at it from a Western lens, how do you think a rainbow is formed? So we have a Western view versus the indigenous view. Okay, so your Western view tells you that light refracting as it hits the water, whereas your indigenous view could state that it signifies a python crossing a river or the death of an important chief. So the question then is, okay, why is it important to understand other views? When we enter the world of science, do we not shed our cultural practices at the door? Is that what we do? Do we need to shed the way we think and the way we believe? Oh, something in the chat. Let's see. I'd love to read this. Michaela, I did a survey with my 6-year-old daughter and her answers were interesting. She said, a cow is an animal because it says moo, and a person is not an animal because it has bones. I asked if animals do not have bones, and she said some do and some do not. And she gave me an example of an octopus and a worm that does not have bones. It was quite funny. Every person is different and everyone thinks it differently. Thank you, Sayuri. Well done, students. Thank you for that contribution. That's really lovely to read. Mrs. Vaderman?
No, I would say thank you, Michaela. I think it's something nice to do with children to actually see their feedback and what they understand. Because sometimes we would only ask them to draw a picture of a plant and then we would stop there. We won't go further into their understanding. We would see, okay, the plant is in the air, or it's not on the ground, or there's just ground, but there's nothing, no roots or anything. But you won't go further into asking them, why did you draw the plant in the middle of the page and not at the bottom, or what's underneath the ground? What do you think we find over there? So thank you very much for actually doing the experiment with your own child. I think the rest of the students can also do that when you go out for your crit lessons, or when you're at school, or use your own children to really find out what they understand. And sometimes their understanding and knowledge comes from the culture or comes from home. And you as a teacher can't then just say, no, that is wrong. Your understanding is incorrect. This is the correct way. You have to help and guide them with the experiments or with activities in the class to understand the science behind it and why the understanding might be incorrect, or why the understanding from home is not correct.
Thank you, Mrs. Bateman. I just want to touch on the point that you mentioned about when the flower's in the air or the flower is drawn in the middle of the page. And often when we look at children's drawings and when we see it's not the way, because sometimes the flower should be in the vase on a table, or even if it's not in a vase, it should be on the table or on the floor, or, in the ground, things like that. And it should not be in the air. And then you look at it and you say, okay, maybe this child hasn't developed properly. And then we make these huge notes in our daily observation, this is what you notice. But you need to stop and ask them the question, you've drawn such a lovely picture, my angel. Tell me all about it. I'm so excited to hear about it. And then they'll tell you, there's an answer of, the table's invisible because I'm a magician. I'm a fairy. I use my wand. And I did that. And that's why it's in the air, because I blew my flower and it flew high up in the air. My flower has helium in it. They're so creative. They live in this fantasy world. So before thinking there is something wrong, and now we need to explore that, just ask the questions. Like sometimes when they draw their body image, you're expecting them to be standing on the ground. And then there's a picture of them jumping. And the answer is, I'm jumping to catch a balloon. I'm jumping to catch the ball. So that's just something I want to add on.
And I think to add with that as well, as sometimes the observation skill is not yet that fully developed, and that you can do nicely with science, where you ask and prompt them, like I saw you draw this picture of a flower, but where's the roots, or where's the leaves, or where's the if you draw a picture of your face, where's your ears, where's your eyes? Because then they will observe and look at the detail of the thing they're actually drawing. And it's very true, we sometimes assume and we think there might be something wrong, and then it's just that they understand or they don't have that skill yet. Kira, thank you. I see you have a nice comment over there about the scientific background. I think the one with the rainbow is a little bit hard for the foundation phase, but it's just an example of understanding from home and what Western views say about science. But yes,
also grade threes could possibly understand this quite well, because foundation phase is grade out to grade 3. And remember, you're building up their skills from the time they're in grade R. So by the time they get to grade 3, in grade R, they already know about the rainbow. They know about rainbows before they come to school. So by the time they get to grade 3, it is something that you could explain to them. You're just building on their knowledge.
And you break it down into little. You won't do the whole refracting of water, but if you just start with something, an experiment you want to do, if you look at the water cycle, only do evaporation on the one side before doing the whole cycle as a whole in different lessons. And I think we sometimes underestimate them.
Yeah.
They have a lot of knowledge from home and from watching TV.
They do. Thank you, Mrs. Lederman. Okay, so why is it important to understand other views? And we have discussed this before. It's not only our opinion or our view that counts. It's having the ability to listen to what other people say and take in that knowledge and then expand our own knowledge as well. So when we enter the world of science, we do not have to shed our cultural practices at the door. Diverse perspectives and values are important. So I see you have been in sharing your experiences. Thank you very much for that as well. It's good to engage. What did you say? When I was young, I was told that a rainbow appears when a monkey or a baboon got married. Yes, I can relate to that. Monkeys are getting married after the rain and the rainbow appears. I can relate to that as well. You, Mrs. Bakerman?
I think sometime as well, I think, because I watched this movie the other day with my son, something about a dragon. I think sometimes kids also get ideas from stories and what they watch. I know my nephew, when he was small, there was a advert of fish where the child draw fish on a piece of paper for art or something, and then she went to put it in the freezer. And then when she opened the freezer, the fish was alive. And he thought he could do that. He went home and he did that at home, drawing the fish, putting it in the freezer, and nothing happened. And he couldn't understand, but this is actually happening on TV. Why can't I do this at home? And that is the point where we should start our lessons at school, because what they find interesting, what they want to find out, or what they don't understand, and not what we want them.
You're correct. And there's a lot of science movies for children on TV that they can watch. And there's those apps that they watch as well. Because when parents pick up that their children are scientifically inclined, they do things at home to promote that knowledge already. So when you say don't assume what they know, that's important. So thank you very much. Okay, in the chat. Yeah, thank you very much, Husna. Brought back a memory for me. Okay, so investigating cultural constructions of knowledge is important because it enables you to build shared understanding and respect across and within cultures. So why is this important? Okay, it builds respect and provides a range of ways of thinking as opposed to only one way of thinking. So if participation in cultural practices, if you think about it, if it is central to our development as humans, then these practices will then influence how we learn and practice science. Science like, yes, in the chat, let's see. Because great our learners still learn through practical engagement. You can use mirrors, glass, shiny metals, and wood in sunlight to show them that rainbows are formed through the light and reflecting on certain surfaces. Well done to me. Thank you very much for the contribution. Okay. So science, like painting, it has a perspective. We can remove our bias and learn from multiple perspectives, and we will understand the world better. So when you're with your colleagues, for instance, and they have a different approach to science and their thinking, and different approach to science and how they're thinking, it's important that you take in what they're saying to expand your own knowledge. In this way, when you're open to ideas, you're not closing yourself off and you are not shutting yourself from learning about more things. That's why if you incorporate that into the classroom, it's important, because you'll notice that sometimes learners have conflicting ideas about what you are teaching them. And it's all from the cultural perspective and what they are, the knowledge that they are bringing in from their own home. So it's you as a teacher, first and foremost, to remove any bias you have. And by doing it in that way, you will allow for the learners in the class to remove any bias they have and create a platform for sharing of ideas and acknowledging each other in a respectful way. Okay. So we need to understand that children develop theories about their own environment, okay, based on their own cultural and everyday experiences. And we have to realize that children may hold different views to those expected by the teacher. So again, you need to be wearing multiple lenses, you know, and not just look through your rose-colored glasses to see what is just important to you. That's your role as a teacher, not to use it as a platform to discuss how you feel about things, but rather to create a platform where the learners are able to engage with you in a constructive manner. Okay, so you need to determine that children make sense of science ideas in relation to existing ideas that they hold, develop an understanding and respect of knowledge in science within different cultures. Okay, so we don't leave our cultural scientific experiences at the door of the classroom and just accept the knowledge and thought that you want to impart in the classroom. Okay, so the cultural historical approach allows for the reanalyzing, or should we say the reconceptualizing of the observations of children, of how they think in science, so that more than the individual child's ideas are considered. This approach considers how children collectively shape their ideas and how their ideas are shaped by their social and material world through science as one form of knowledge construction. And we know now that this work was founded on the work from Vygotsky. So in order to understand the individual, one needs to understand the cultural, historical context in which the individual exists. And I think once you've understood how significant and how important that is, it will make your science lessons all the more interesting, where you are continuously finding ways in which you allow for exploration and investigation and discovery within your lessons. Okay, and why that theme table is so important, which we're going to be discussing on Friday as well in the lecture. Pardon. So in order to understand the individual, I said you need to understand the cultural historical context in which that individual exists. It then draws our attention to the social material context as a source for the development of the learner's scientific thinking. So that is what we need to develop in the classroom. How relationships shape children and how children shape their social relationships. Another one is their community values. Okay, what is that based on? What is the community propagate that they are living in? Remember, this extends to their religious beliefs and their places of worship, because that's all part of being a community. Okay, family beliefs and practices. What does the family believe? What does the family practice at home? Are the parents scientific thinkers? Are the parents one that think, science just does not exist? It's not there, and they have other ways of putting together the information that they've learned. You will come across people on the opposite ends of these poles, okay? The past experiences have laid the foundations of what participants pay attention to in their communities. So that whole community aspect is an important part to take into consideration as well. So we speak about moving through rather than to learning. So we move from not knowing something to knowing. Okay. So the journey of learning has its pit stops, contexts and relationships along the way, which change the way that children see and understand the information. Okay. Traditionally, teachers have been seen as a destination rather than a journey, because that's what they know, that's the knowledge you're going to get from them. And our idea was to focus on the end point, but then we forget the process, the gaining of the knowledge rather than the process of attaining that knowledge. Limitations of this traditional way of thinking is that teachers forget that children are likely to develop different understandings of the new information based on their context and relationships. And remember, relationships is not only between the parents at home and the community and the religious spaces that happen around them and social, and their siblings at home. It's also that peer relationship that they develop at school when they sit and they listen. It also extends to the extended family and friendships they may have outside of the school circle, but through their parents' social environment. Okay, because some parents are really sociable and they have friends and their children engage with other children as well. Okay, also at family gatherings, it's not only, when you attend a family gathering, it's not only your mom's family, but it's your dad's family as well, and it's cousins from both sides that they engage with, that where the parents raise them differently in their homes, they go to different schools as well. So they're also getting knowledge from the relationships that they are building. So some teachers view learning as a step or leap from a position of not knowing to a position of knowing. This would then suggest that a knowledgeable person, such as a teacher, is able to provide children with information so that they can learn and thus make a shift from not knowing to a point of knowing. Another way of looking at it could be that a person uses a book or any other type of source of information to help them move from the point, to move to the point of knowing. So in both examples, you can see that the person who is learning wants to receive more information so that they know more. And we know that in the world that we're living in today, in the 21st century and the fourth industrial revolution, everything else that's going on around us, a hard copy book is not our only source of information that we have. Okay, again, when we pick out our sources of information, we should also have the ability to critically examine the pieces of work that we are reading and not just be gullible and blindly read everything. That is why, just to bring you back to your assignments, and that it's so important that when you are citing references, that you bring in more than one author, where you can say, you know, Vygotsky says this, however, you know, Peter states this as well, whereas if you look at Holmes, he says this, you know, and with this understanding, we can deduce this is what's happening. So if you just read one source of knowledge and make that your framework of knowledge, it becomes difficult to become a critical thinker, because you're not drawing in information from different sources. So your knowledge is then limited and you don't know what other information is out there. And only relying on social media is not a good idea as well. Okay. With that being said, what is the role that the social, cultural, and historical context play on the person's process of learning? So if you can put that in the chat, we can discuss that as well. What do you think that role plays on a person's process of learning? We know that learning is actually more like a journey. It's like when you are packing your car and you're going on holiday. There's a lot of things that happen before you get to your destination. You know, there's a lot of things that need to be put in place. You've got to pack all your things. It's got to go into a bag. When you pack everything into the boot of the car, you have to make sure that there's enough space to not only accommodate your luggage, but whoever you're traveling with. Because we don't live our life in silo, you know, you've got to make accommodations. And this is just an analogy of the boot space for everybody's luggage to fit. Once you're in the car, you know, you have to close the doors, the ignition has to start, you know. As you are traveling, there are yield signs, there's stop streets, there's robots. There's so many things you have to get through. At some point, if you haven't checked how much petrol you've had, you're going to have to stop and refuel again. You know, and that will teach you for the next time when you're going. And then there's scenery along the way before you get to your destination. There's something that could happen in the car at the moment with whoever you're traveling with, where you're going to just have to stop the car, take a break, help whoever it is that you're helping, and then continue on your journey. So again, if you just use that and, you know, take that analogy, put it into your classroom, you understand the learning process of your learners as well. Okay. So learning is actually more like a journey where the various contexts and relationships influence the person's understanding at different times. Children in your class will start the learning journey with certain perceptions and beliefs based on their family and community views. As you progress, these views will shape the way children see and learn any new information. The social relationships within the classroom may also change the way that children understand new information. They may also discuss their new knowledge. And by doing that, there are ways in which they will now understand the new content and make it relevant to them. So the journey of learning has stops, the context and relationships along the way, which change the way that children see and understand the information. Okay. So one of the limitations of the traditional approach is the way of thinking is that teachers forget that children are likely to develop different understandings of the new information based on the context and relationships. The cultural historical theory helps us to see that we move through the learning process rather than moving to learning, as our knowledge is shaped by our context and interactions. Okay, so if we look at the slide, there are 3 lenses up. Okay, the information which we share with children won't be interpreted in the same way by each child. Okay, so if you look at the first lens, is what the child already knows. The knowledge children bring from their community or their family will determine how they understand new information. Okay, the next one, the second focus area, is the child's social relationships. Interactions with others have an effect on the way the child learns new information. And the last focus includes the child's different contexts. These communities of practice will influence how the child makes meaning of new information. Okay, so border crossing from a cultural worldview to social science. So it's an important concept, and this is very relevant to our modern day world. Ironhead and Michelle have labeled this, they are authors. There's much more reading in your textbook. There's also some independent reading for you to engage with here as well. So they've labeled this movement in thinking from an Indigenous worldview to a Western school science view by Indigenous students as border crossing. Okay, so as we already discussed, the way children develop concepts is based on many interrelated factors. So these 2 authors believe that the children's concept development is influenced by their worldview, what we've already mentioned. As our classrooms become more culturally diverse, teachers need to be aware of each child's background. Like I informed you, you will have their files, you will go through it, you will be able to see. And in the first few weeks of school at show and tell, they are so eager to share their life and where they come from and what they do. So their cultural beliefs is something that you would already have some knowledge of. Okay, so you'll be aware of the child's background and how the child's individual cultural beliefs and values affects his or her ability to learn scientific concepts. We've already discussed that teachers and schools don't necessarily share the views and values of their learners, but that doesn't mean that we don't have to understand where they're coming from and create a platform for them. With that being said, we need to evaluate our own cultural and religious perspective so that we can embrace children. Okay, it's also important for teachers to seriously examine their own attitudes towards people who think and look differently from them. In the classroom, it's comfortable to call on students whose opinions, speech, and attitudes match the teachers. It becomes a lot more difficult when you know that your beliefs and opinions is difficult. If you are a teacher that finds it difficult accommodating other views, then it will pose a problem for you. Okay, often the quiet students, they feel uncomfortable because there's a new culture and a new language, and they need personal attention from the teacher to empower them to participate more fully. Okay, and Jugeri and Aikenhead believe that children fall into different categories in terms of how they negotiate cultural borders. And as teachers, we need to be aware of these categories so that we can adapt our teaching to include all the learners. That is why that lesson plan is so important, and to let them achieve their full potential. So the first type of border crossing that they discuss is potent scientists. Okay, these transitions are smooth because the cultures of the family and the science, they're harmonious, they're in tune with each other. Okay. The other smart kids, this is a manageable transition as the 2 cultures are to some extent different. Okay. Then we have the next one, the I don't know students. This is called a hazardous transition when the 2 cultures are so diverse. And the last one is outsiders, which seems like an impossible transition as the cultures are highly conflicting. What do you do when you disagree with what you need to teach, for example, religion? Mrs. Vederman?
I don't know if you want to start.
Oh, okay. Candace, what I think is that when there's a difference between religious instruction and religion education. There's a difference between the 2. And I think our platform is to give them knowledge about the different religions and not So whether you agree or disagree with the learner is not what comes to play in the classroom, because that is your own personal perspective and your view on religion. So your goal in the classroom, or your aim in the classroom, is to provide them with knowledge on all the different religions and give them a space where they can discuss their religion, because that also creates a platform where the other learners in the class obviously don't share the same religion, but then it develops an understanding and accommodation as well from others to know that we are all different. So it's not based on how we feel. And absolutely, a child's religious views is going to conflict with yours, but it's not for you to make it known in the classroom. Mrs. Bailey?
No, I fully agree. I think the other thing to remember is religion makes a part out of who we are and what we believe in. So it's part of who the students are, and that learner is self-identity. So giving them a chance to explain their own religion or their own from home culture is a good thing. And if you're not going to discuss it in school, it's part of the CAPS document. You can give knowledge that's research and information that's correct. If that learner still has questions, or if you're not going to do it, they're going to find this out from other students or other learners in class. So if you're not going to talk about different religions, they're going to find this out from these sister's friend or from another friend, and that might be the incorrect information. So I think as a teacher, when it gets to religion, we should be biased and discuss it out of knowledge based and give them a space to come and explain their own religion and culture to the rest of the class.
Thank you, Mrs. Vederman. Okay, I think we've got 9 minutes left. So, Mrs. Mutuveri. Mrs. Mutuveri, did you want to add something?
Thank you, Dr. Kumari. I also wanted to add, saying that, yes, can you hear me?
You're breaking up.
I'm actually speaking. Can you?
Now I can.
I'm actually speaking. Can you hear me?
Okay, while Mrs. Mutuveri is connecting again, I'm going to continue. The cognitive process of border crossing can be termed as collateral learning. So we have something called parallel collateral. This is when children have the scientific and common sense understanding, but will apply the scientific to school understanding only to the school context, and common sense understanding to the home or everyday context. Here again, students, I'm going to encourage you to please read the material from your textbook, where they give you examples where you can apply the knowledge that you are learning. It's important that you engage with the material in your textbook as well. The second one is simultaneous collateral. It describes how children hold in their minds two different ways of explaining a scientific concept. Then we have the dependent and secured. And the children do not have the same levels of contradiction. They have developed ways or justifications for holding on to different views, or do not hold opposing views. Rather, their thinking is closely aligned to the accepted scientific principle. Okay? So, as mentioned, children fall into different categories in terms of how they negotiate these cultural borders. This has a strong influence on whether they achieve success or failure in school science. And I think this is very important, where you encourage them from the beginning of how important science is, make it fun, make it engaging, and that you can only do by providing ample opportunities for discovery, exploration, and investigation, and giving them the platform to think, asking them open-ended questions, and leading them, even if they don't know the answer, not just abandoning what they are saying, come back to them and make sure that they are given a voice, so that they don't just retreat to themselves and then eventually become invisible in the classroom. Okay, so there's a question on the ECI page called Transcending Cultural Borders. Read the research article, Transcending Cultural Borders, Implication for Science Teaching. While you read the article, reflect on the diversity that exists within South African classrooms and what this diversity means for South African teachers. Okay, so it's just something for you to read. You do not have to submit this anyway. It's for your own personal knowledge and growth. Okay, if you have any questions, you can post that to the chat. This now brings us to the end of this lecture. Thank you for your engagement, students. I really enjoyed engaging with you. Here we go. Thank you, Mrs. Bademan. That brings us to the end. I'm not sure if you want to add anything else.
I wanted to ask a question to the students. So just with a yes or no, I want to think now how to formulate this. If you think about what we discussed today, how children make sense of the world and their understanding, do you think something like the curriculum where we have themes that we have to do and we're being dictated about what you should do in your classroom, is that a good thing? Or do you think the CAPS documents should be more lenient about themes and what we should discuss with the learners after we discussed this today? Just yes or no, good, bad, good thing, thank you. Sorry. Good thing. Do you think we should just take the themes and present them as they are in the curriculum? No. Michaela, thank you. Tumi, no. Lauren, no. Awesome, thank you. What I wanted to get to is teachers sometimes just take the themes and this is what the CAPS document say we have to do for the week, and this is what I'm going to do for the for my learners, and I don't find out what they find interesting. I don't go back to find out what they understand about the topic. If the previous year's knowledge or skills are developed and I can just carry on, so I just take the theme or the curriculum and I carry on. But if you actually go look at the CAPS document, I think on page 12 it says, indicates that we can change the topic and the theme based on the learners in front of you. So I want you to remember that when you present your lessons. You as a teacher can change the topic if you think it's not appropriate, if it's too difficult, if it's too easy for the learners or for your group, if it's something that they did in the previous year, or if it's something that they don't find interesting. Why are we doing the theme with them? Then go find out what they understand, go find out what they find interesting, and then let that be your starting point of presenting your lessons or planning your lessons. So remember that, yeah, just remember that we're not forced to just do the themes in the CAPS document. You as a teacher can change them and make them interesting. Ask the learners what they want to know. Thank you. Yeah, I agree, Asna. That's very important. It's general guidelines. Because every set of learners has a different level of understanding, and that you will see from year to year. This year my group is strong and they understand the topic and it's too easy. Next year they're going to struggle with the themes, and it's okay then to take a step back. I'm going to change my lessons. I'm not going to do the same lessons as the previous year. Thank you very much. Thank you for your participation, students. I think you muted.
Thank you. One of the students put in the chat that isn't it just better to leave religion out of the classroom? It's not possible.
It's part of a theme that you should do, and I think it's I had a student, well, I had a lot of learners in my class that had different religions than I did, and obviously what you teach them about that religion, and because I saw I saw the one student made a comment about Jewish and you were at a school with strong Christian morals. I had a classroom and the school was Christian and I had a Jewish child in the class. So the parents knew that it's a Christian school and they knew that we're going to read out of the Bible and do Christian values and so on. But they kept him in the school. And he was actually the child with the most questions in my classroom. So I think it's something that we should do in school. It's one of the themes. I don't think you should force them to believe in your religion. I don't know, Dr. Padiachi, if you want to add.
No, absolutely. You know, you can't leave religion out because learners are going to talk about it in the classroom. They want to engage with you. Like you said, it's part of their identities, who they are. It's, you know, it defines them. So as long as our role is to create that platform and to come in from an informative approach, because no matter which religion you believe in, you still want to be informed of other religions in this world, because we're not in a silo, we're not just by ourselves. So it's important that they have that.
And I think there's some values and norms that overall doesn't depend on what religion or value, like love and respect are things that we as humans have. It's not based just on I'm a Christian or I'm Jewish. And if you're a different religion than me, doesn't mean I'm not going to love you, I'm not going to care for you. I think it's something that we should encourage discussing in the class because that is who they are and that's what they believe. And you can tell them, this is what I believe. What do you guys believe in your religion? Ask their parents to come to school and have a session. I think it's a really nice discussion that you can have in your class.
And it encourages tolerance and understanding. Thank you, Mrs. Weideman. I see it's 1 minute past 2 now.
Awesome. Yeah, we have to run for our next session. Thank you, guys. We'll see you on Thursday.
Bye-bye.
Bye.